the receptionist who advocates for a fired coworker, never realizing her boss secretly tests her for promotion, sits at her desk with trembling hands. Sarah Miller had always been the steady heartbeat of Harrington Financial, the one who remembered everyone's birthdays and kept the office running with quiet efficiency. But today, the rhythm of her workplace felt off-kilter, like a beloved song played in the wrong key. The morning light filtered weakly through the blinds, casting thin golden bars across her organized desk. Sarah's fingers hovered over her keyboard, the half-written email to HR blurring before her eyes. The words reconsideration and unjust termination stood out in bold relief. She blinked back the moisture gathering at the corners of her eyes, remembering the hollow look on Marcus's face as he'd carried his belongings out in a cardboard box yesterday. "Just let it go, Sarah," Lisa from accounting had whispered earlier, leaning over the reception desk with coffee-scented concern. "People get fired all the time. Don't put yourself in the crosshairs." But that was exactly the problem, wasn't it? People did get fired all the time. Good people. People like Marcus Rodriguez, who'd mentored the interns and stayed late without complaint. People who deserved better than a cold dismissal after 5 years of loyal service. The elevator chimed, pulling Sarah from her thoughts. Her spine straightened automatically as CEO Richard Harrington strode through the glass doors, his imposing figure cutting through the morning bustle like a ship through calm waters. At 55, he carried himself with the confidence of someone who'd built an empire from the ground up, his salt and pepper hair and tailored suits telegraphing success and authority. "Good morning, Mr. Harrington." Sarah offered her usual greeting, warm and professional despite the hollowness in her chest. Richard paused, his piercing blue eyes settling on her with unusual intensity. "Morning, Sarah." A beat of silence followed, longer than their normal exchanges. "Everything all right?" Sarah's heart stumbled. Did he know about the email she was drafting? The one questioning his decision to fire Marcus? "Of course, sir." Her smile didn't quite reach her eyes. "Your 9:30 with Peterson Capital called to confirm, and I've placed the quarterly reports on your desk." He nodded, something unreadable flickering across his features. "Thank you." He hesitated, then added, "My door is open if you need anything," before continuing toward his corner office. Sarah exhaled slowly, unaware she'd been holding her breath. The weight of what she was about to do pressed against her chest. Standing up against management wasn't something she'd ever imagined doing. Her job was safe, comfortable, the kind most people would protect at all costs, especially single mothers with college tuition looming on the horizon. The photograph of Lily, her 17-year-old daughter, smiled up at her from its silver frame. Those bright eyes held dreams that depended on Sarah's steady paycheck. One wrong move could jeopardize everything they'd worked for. Yet Marcus had a family too. A wife who'd just started chemotherapy. 2 elementary school children who drew pictures that still hung in his empty cubicle. Sarah's fingers returned to the keyboard with renewed purpose. Sometimes doing the right thing meant risking something precious. Sometimes kindness required courage. "I respectfully request a review of Marcus Rodriguez's termination," she typed, each click of the keys steadier than the last. In his 5 years at Harrington Financial, he has demonstrated exceptional dedication and skill. What Sarah couldn't see, as she crafted her careful appeal, was Richard Harrington standing at his office window, watching her with a thoughtful expression. Nor could she see the slight smile that touched his lips when she finally hit send, on the email that had just arrived in his inbox. The marketing department felt like a ghost town. 2 weeks after Marcus's dismissal, his absence remained a palpable thing, like a missing tooth constantly probed by the tongue. Sarah noticed it each time she delivered mail to that floor, the awkward pause in conversations as she passed, the empty desk still waiting for its new occupant. "You've got guts, I'll give you that," said Diane, the marketing coordinator, when Sarah stopped by with a package. The older woman's eyes crinkled with something between admiration and concern, first standing up for Marcus, now organizing that collection for Elaine's treatments. "You know what they say about no good deed going unpunished." Sarah shifted the remaining mail in her arms. The envelope collection for Marcus's wife had been simple enough to arrange, an anonymous way for coworkers to contribute something for the family struggling with both job loss and medical bills. She hadn't expected word to spread so quickly. "It's nothing anyone else wouldn't do," Sarah murmured, uncomfortable with the attention. Diane snorted softly. "Honey, Most people in this building are too afraid of their own shadows to speak up, let alone challenge the CEO. You really think Marcus was fired for budgetary reasons? She made air quotes around the official explanation. That department is the most profitable in the company. A chill whispered down Sarah's spine. What are you saying? I'm saying be careful. Richard Harrington didn't build this company by being sentimental. There's always an angle with him. Diane's voice dropped to a near whisper. Though between us, he's been watching you. Not in a creepy way, more like he's evaluating something. The observation settled uneasily in Sarah's stomach as she finished her mail rounds. She'd noticed it too. The CEO's increased presence near reception, the thoughtful looks, the casual questions about her day that went beyond their usual professional courtesy. That afternoon, as weak winter sunlight faded from the sky outside the office windows, Sarah's phone rang. The caller ID displayed Richard Harrington, CEO. Sarah, could you come to my office? Bring the Westlake contract if you would? Her mouth went dry. Of course, Mr. Harrington. Right away. The Westlake contract wasn't even her department. It was a flimsy pretense, and they both knew it. This was about Marcus. About the email. About the collection that probably violated some corporate policy she hadn't considered. The walk to his office felt endless. Sarah's sensible heels clicked against the polished floor, each step echoing like a countdown. She smoothed her skirt with damp palms, clutching the requested folder like a shield. Richard's assistant nodded her through with a sympathetic smile that only tightened the knot in Sarah's stomach. Was her termination so obvious that even Brenda could see it coming? The CEO's office was a corner masterpiece of glass and mahogany, offering panoramic views of the city skyline. Richard stood by the window, silhouetted against the dying light, a tumbler of amber liquid in his hand. He turned when she entered, gesturing to the chair opposite his desk. Sarah, thank you for coming. She sat, spine straight, the folder placed precisely on her lap, professional to the end. You wanted to see the Westlake contract, sir? A faint smile touched his lips as he took his seat. We both know that's not why you're here. He set his glass down, folding his hands on the desk. I received your email about Marcus Rodriguez. Sarah swallowed hard. Yes, sir. It was passionate, well-reasoned. His expression revealed nothing. You've worked here 7 years now, is that correct? 8 next month? She corrected softly. He nodded, as if confirming something to himself. Always at reception. Always. Reliable. The last word carried a weight she couldn't quite interpret. Tell me, Sarah, why risk your position for someone in a completely different department? Someone you barely work with directly? The question hung between them. Through the glass walls, Sarah could see employees gathering their things, heading home to families and dinners and lives untouched by this moment of reckoning. She thought of Lily waiting at home, probably sprawled across their couch with college applications. Because it wasn't right, she said finally, her voice steadier than she felt. Marcus is an excellent employee. Whatever mistake he made, he deserved a warning, not termination, especially not with his family situation. She met Richard's gaze directly. Sometimes the human cost matters more than the bottom line, Mr. Harrington. Something shifted in his expression, a softening around the eyes, perhaps, or a slight relaxation of his jaw. He leaned back in his chair. And the collection for his wife's medical expenses? That was your initiative as well. Sarah nodded, fighting the urge to look away. It seemed like the least we could do. Richard was silent for a long moment, studying her with that same inscrutable expression. Then he opened a drawer and withdrew a file. Did you know I started as a mail clerk? He asked unexpectedly, his tone conversational. Not here, of course. At Mercer & Sons, back when dinosaurs roamed the earth. A rare glimpse of humor. 32 years ago. I was just out of college, desperate for any foot in the door. Sarah blinked, thrown by this sudden personal revelation. I didn't know that, sir. Few do. He tapped the file thoughtfully. I had a manager once, older woman named Patricia. Terrifying efficiency, heart of gold though she pretended otherwise. I made a massive error in my 3rd month, sent confidential documents to the wrong address. His eyes grew distant with memory. Should have been fired on the spot. But Patricia went to bat for me with the partners. Said I deserved a second chance. He slid the file across the desk towards Sarah. Open it. With hesitant fingers, she flipped it open. Inside was an organizational chart she'd never seen before, a restructuring of the marketing and client relations departments. Near the top, a new position, Director of Client Experience. Below it, circled in blue ink, was her name. Confusion washed over her. I don't understand. Marcus Rodriguez wasn't fired, Sarah. Richard's voice was quiet. He was promoted to our Seattle office, a substantial raise, full relocation package, comprehensive health benefits that covered the treatments his wife needed. It was all confidential until the paperwork cleared yesterday. The room seemed to tilt slightly. But the cardboard box. Everyone saw him leave. A necessary bit of theater. Richard stood, moving to a credenza where he poured water from a crystal decanter. Elaine's condition took a turn. They needed to get to Seattle quickly, where her specialist is based. The firing story was expedient. Marcus's idea, actually. Saved him from weeks of goodbye lunches and explanations when they needed to focus on her health. He handed her the water glass. Her fingers trembled slightly as she accepted it. "The collection money?" she asked, still trying to process this revelation. "Will be returned with my personal thanks and a company match." He returned to his chair. "What interests me, Sarah, is that you had no idea of any of this. Yet you still chose to advocate for a colleague, potentially risking your own position." Understanding began to dawn, slowly, like the first light of morning. This was a test. Richard's smile was both confirmation and appreciation. "Not originally, but your response revealed something I've been searching for. Do you know what separates a good company from a great one, Sarah?" She shook her head, still dazed by the turn of events. "Culture. Values that extend beyond profit margins. For years, I've handled client relations personally because I couldn't find someone who understood that balance, someone who sees both the business and the humans within it." He tapped the file. "The position is yours if you want it. Director of Client Experience. You'd oversee our most valuable relationships, ensure our service reflects our values. Triple your current salary. Full benefits, of course." Sarah's breath caught. Triple her salary. Lily's college tuition suddenly wasn't a mountain but a manageable hill. The constant struggle to keep their small apartment, the second jobs she'd taken during holidays, the careful budgeting of every expense, all potentially behind them. "Why me?" she managed finally. "I don't have a marketing background. I'm just a receptionist." "No," Richard corrected firmly. "You're the person who knows every client's name when they walk through that door. Who remembers their children's accomplishments and their food preferences. Who treats the janitor with the same respect as the board members?" He leaned forward. "You're the heart of this company, Sarah. I'm just asking you to take on a bigger role in its future." The silence that followed felt sacred somehow, a space where life pivoted on its axis. Outside, the city lights began to glimmer against the darkening sky, 1,000 tiny stars brought down to earth. "I'd need to think about it," she said finally, professionalism battling with the wild hope blooming in her chest. "Talk to my daughter." Richard nodded, understanding in his eyes. "Of course. Take the weekend. The position is yours to accept or decline. No pressure, no consequences either way." He stood, signaling the end of their meeting. "But Sarah, for what it's worth, I think you were born for this role." As she walked back to her desk, file clutched against her chest like a precious thing, Sarah felt lighter than she had in years. The office hummed around her, unchanged yet somehow completely different, like a familiar landscape viewed from a new height. Her phone buzzed with a text from Lily. "Pizza or Thai for dinner?" "I'm starving," Sarah smiled, tapping back a quick reply. "Thai. And I have news. Sometimes kindness required courage. And sometimes courage changed everything." The first 2 weeks in her new role passed in a blur of introductions and learning curves. Sarah's office, her own actual office with a door and a window, still felt like someone else's space she was temporarily occupying. Each morning, she placed a fresh photograph of Lily on her desk, a grounding reminder of why she had accepted this leap into the unknown. "You're hovering again," said Kevin, her newly assigned assistant, a recent college graduate with bright eyes and boundless energy. "The Wilson meeting isn't for another hour, and you've reviewed the presentation 6 times. Sarah smoothed her new charcoal suit, purchased with the first installment of her increased salary, and forced herself to sit down. "Is it that obvious I'm terrified?" Kevin leaned against the doorframe, amusement dancing across his features. "Only to everyone with functioning eyeballs." His tone softened. "But you've got this. The whole floor is talking about how you handled the Jennings account yesterday." The Jennings account, her first real test. A long-standing client threatening to leave after a service failure. Sarah had spent hours on the phone, not just addressing the immediate problem, but learning about the client's broader concerns and vision. By the end of the call, Mrs. Jennings had not only agreed to stay, but had increased her investment portfolio. "That was just doing my job," Sarah murmured, though pride warmed her chest. "That's what makes you different," Kevin said simply. "To everyone else, it's a job. To you, it's people." As he left to prepare the conference room, Sarah's phone lit up with a text from Lily. "Killed my calculus test. Still on for celebration dinner?" Sarah smiled, typing back, "Absolutely. Proud of you!" My treat at Giovanni's. The restaurant would have been an impossible extravagance just weeks ago. Now it was a manageable special occasion. The knowledge sent a complex wave of emotion through her, gratitude tangled with lingering disbelief. A soft knock at her door drew her attention. Richard stood there, looking unusually casual in shirt sleeves with his suit jacket slung over one arm. "Got a minute?" he asked, though they both knew the CEO never actually needed to request time. Sarah gestured to the chair opposite her desk, a reversal of their positions that still felt surreal. Of course. He settled into the seat, his expression thoughtful. "I've been reviewing the client feedback since you took over. Impressive start." "Thank you," she said, the praise both gratifying and anxiety-inducing. "I'm still finding my footing." "That's not what the Jennings family would say." A smile touched his lips. "Margaret Jennings called me personally to say you were the first person in this company who actually listened to her concerns about her grandchildren's trust funds." Heat rose to Sarah's cheeks. She just needed someone to understand that it wasn't about the money, it was about the legacy she's creating for her family. Richard nodded slowly. "Exactly." He paused, studying her with that same evaluating look she'd noticed before. "I have a favor to ask. A personal one." Sarah blinked, surprised. In 8 years, Richard Harrington had never asked her for anything personal. "Of course. My son David is moving back to town next month. He'll be joining the company." Sarah nodded. Everyone knew about David Harrington, Harvard Business School, 5 years at a prestigious consulting firm in Boston, groomed to eventually take over the family business. His return had been announced in last week's company newsletter. He's brilliant with numbers, strategic thinking, all the technical aspects of the business, Richard continued, an unusual note of vulnerability entering his voice. But he struggles with the human element. Always has. Understanding dawned. "You want me to help him connect with the clients?" "With the clients? With the staff?" Richard's gaze dropped to his hands, then back to her face. "With me, perhaps. We've been distant since his mother passed." The personal admission hung in the air between them, fragile and unexpected. Sarah had heard about Mrs. Harrington's death from cancer 3 years ago, but the grief that flashed across Richard's face made the loss suddenly immediate and real. "I'd be happy to help however I can," she said softly. Relief relaxed the lines around Richard's eyes. "Thank you. He arrives on the 15th. Perhaps you could include him in some of your client meetings? Show him how you build those relationships." "Of course." As Richard stood to leave, he paused at the door. "One more thing, Sarah. Marcus Rodriguez called yesterday. Elaine's latest scan came back clear." Joy bloomed in Sarah's chest. "That's wonderful news." "Yes." Richard's expression was warm. "He asked after you. Said to tell you the flowers you sent meant the world to them." He hesitated, then added, "You've changed things here, Sarah. More than you know." After he left, Sarah stood at her window, gazing out at the city spread below. Somewhere out there, Lily was finishing her school day, perhaps already planning which dress to wear to dinner. Somewhere Marcus and Elaine Rodriguez were embracing the promise of a future together. And here, in this office that still smelled of new carpet and possibility, Sarah was becoming someone she'd never imagined she could be. Her calendar alert chimed, reminding her of the Wilson meeting. With a deep breath, she gathered her materials, smoothed her suit once more, and stepped toward her future with steady hands. David Harrington was nothing like his father. Where Richard projected calm authority, David radiated restless energy. Where Richard's salt and pepper hair was always impeccably styled, David's dark curls had a rebellious quality that suggested frequent agitated finger combing. And where Richard's office was ordered minimalism, David's temporary workspace, the glass-walled conference room he'd commandeered upon arrival, looked like a tornado of spreadsheets and coffee cups. "This client meeting is a waste of time," he declared, barely looking up from his laptop when Sarah entered. "I've reviewed their portfolio. The numbers don't justify the personal attention." 3 weeks into their working relationship, and Sarah had already learned that David's brusque manner masked a brilliant mind and, she suspected, a deep insecurity. At 32, he carried the weight of the Harrington legacy like an ill-fitting suit, necessary but uncomfortable. "The Thompsons have been with us for 15 years. Sarah replied evenly, setting a folder on the table beside him. "Their account might be modest, but they've referred 6 major clients to us." David's fingers paused over his keyboard. a reluctant concession. Fine, but I'm not doing the small talk thing. That's your department. Actually, Sarah pulled out the chair opposite him, settling in with deliberate calm. I thought you might lead this one. His head snapped up, dark eyes widening. What? Number? That's why my father assigned you to babysit me, isn't it? So I don't scare off the gentle folk with my terrible people skills? The bitterness in his tone couldn't quite mask the hurt beneath. Sarah let the accusation hang in the air between them, meeting his glare with steady patience. Your father asked me to collaborate with you because we have complementary skills, my relationship building, your strategic vision. She opened the folder, sliding a document toward him. The Thompsons' daughter just got accepted to medical school. They're concerned about balancing her education costs with their retirement planning. David stared at her for a long moment before dropping his gaze to the document. How do you know that? It's not in their file. Mrs. Thompson mentioned it when she called to confirm the appointment. She's worried. They promised to help with tuition, but they're not sure how to make it work. Something shifted in David's expression, the faintest softening around the eyes. Med school. That's a $200,000 commitment minimum. Sarah nodded. Which is why I thought you should lead. This isn't about small talk. It's about restructuring their investments to achieve multiple goals simultaneously. That's where you excel. The compliment, simple and genuine, seemed to catch him off guard. His defensive posture relaxed slightly. You've seen my work? I've been reviewing your proposals for the Miller account. Your approach to diversification while maintaining liquidity was, honestly, it was brilliant. A flush of pleasure colored his cheeks before he could suppress it. It was basic portfolio theory. It was innovative, Sarah corrected gently. And exactly what the Thompsons need, someone who can see possibilities they can't. David studied her, wariness gradually giving way to cautious curiosity. Why are you doing this? Most people in this company just wait for me to fail. The raw honesty of the question deserved equal honesty in return. Because I know what it's like to be underestimated. She gathered her notes, standing to leave him with the file. And because your father believes in you. As it happens, I respect his judgment. At the door, she paused. The Thompsons will be here at 2. They always arrive 10 minutes early because Mr. Thompson is pathologically punctual. He takes his coffee black. She prefers tea with honey. A small smile touched her lips. Just in case you wanted to avoid the small talk. The meeting with the Thompsons exceeded all expectations. Sarah watched from the sidelines as David walked the couple through options they'd never considered, a targeted investment strategy that protected their retirement while creating a dedicated education fund. His initial awkwardness gave way to genuine enthusiasm as he explained complex financial concepts in terms they could understand. You've taken such a weight off our shoulders, Mrs. Thompson said as the meeting concluded, impulsively reaching out to squeeze David's hand. Melanie was prepared to take out loans, but the thought of her starting her career so deeply in debt, she should focus on becoming the best doctor she can be, David replied, the usual edge absent from his voice. That's investment enough. After they left, he remained at the conference table, staring at his notes with an expression Sarah couldn't quite read. That was excellent work, she said, gathering the empty cups. They remind me of my parents, he said quietly. Before everything, Dad used to look at Mom the way Mr. Thompson looks at his wife. The personal admission hung in the air, unexpected and fragile. Sarah set the cups down, giving the moment the respect it deserved. Your father misses her very much, she said simply. David's laugh was sharp, humorless. Does he? Hard to tell when he buries himself in this company every waking hour. Grief takes different forms. Is that what you call it? Because from where I stand, it looks like replacing one obsession with another. He began gathering his papers with jerky movements. First, it was building the business while Mom raised me. Then it was expanding into new markets while she got sick. Now it's all about the legacy and the succession plan. His mouth twisted. Tell me, Sarah, did he give you the speech about culture and values? About what makes a good company great? The direct hit landed with uncomfortable accuracy. He believes in what he's built here. He believes in control. David stood abruptly. But thanks for today. You were right about the Thompsons. They deserved better than numbers on a spreadsheet. As he strode from the room, Sarah felt the echo of old pain in his retreating footsteps. The loss of a mother? The distance from a father consumed by his own grief. The pressure of expectations without the foundation of connection. That evening, as she prepared to leave, Sarah paused outside Richard's office. Through the glass, she could see him at his desk, silhouetted against the city lights, looking more alone than a man of his success should ever be. A memory surfaced, Richard mentioning a manager who'd once given him a second chance, who'd seen his potential when others hadn't. Perhaps it was time to return that kindness in a different form. She knocked softly on his door. "Do you have dinner plans tonight, Mr. Harrington?" she asked when he looked up. Surprise flickered across his features. "Just the usual takeout at my desk." "Why?" "I was thinking you might join my daughter and me at Giovanni's instead." She smiled at his confusion. "Lily's been curious about my new boss, and they make an excellent risotto." "That's very kind, but I wouldn't want to intrude on your family time." "It's not an intrusion if it's an invitation." Sarah hesitated, then added gently, "David mentioned you haven't tried their tiramisu. Apparently it was your wife's favorite." Something vulnerable flashed in Richard's eyes, a brief glimpse of the man behind the CEO. He remembered that? Children remember more than we realize. She stepped into the office, her voice softening. "He's trying, to live up to what he thinks you want." Richard set down his pen, the weight of unspoken regrets visible in the slope of his shoulders. "And what is it you think I want, Sarah?" "The same thing any parent wants. For your child to be happy, to find their place in the world." She smiled sadly. "Even if that place isn't exactly where you imagined it would be." The silence that followed felt like a bridge being carefully constructed between islands long separated. "Giovanni's, you said?" Richard finally asked. 7 o'clock. "No business talk allowed?" She turned to leave, then paused. "Oh, and you might mention Harvard's spring musical program to Lily. She's applying there next fall. Theater major." Understanding dawned in Richard's eyes. "Your daughter wants to be an actress?" "A director, actually." Much to her practical mother's initial dismay, Sarah's smile was rueful. "Sometimes our children surprise us by becoming exactly who they're meant to be, rather than who we planned for them to be." The message beneath her words hung in the air between them, an offering without pressure. 7 o'clock, Richard confirmed with a nod that carried the weight of decision. "I'll be there." Dinner at Giovanni's became a monthly tradition. Richard and Lily developed an unlikely friendship built on her questions about business leadership and his surprisingly extensive knowledge of classic theater. 3 months into this new pattern, David joined them for the first time, awkward and resistant initially, then gradually warming as the evening progressed. "Your daughter's going to take Broadway by storm," David told Sarah as they waited for their cars afterward, Richard and Lily deep in conversation several paces ahead. "Harvard would be lucky to have her. She's remarkable," Sarah agreed, maternal pride warming her voice. "Though I'm still adjusting to the idea of her living across the country." David studied her with unexpected perception. "That's why you never pursued advancement before, isn't it? Single mom, stable job, reliable income. You stayed where you were for her sake." The observation, accurate and insightful, revealed a depth to David that his professional persona often concealed. "We do what we need to for the people we love," Sarah said simply. Something shifted in David's expression, a realization forming. That's what Dad was doing too, wasn't it? After Mom died, pouring himself into the work because it was the only way he knew how to secure my future. Before Sarah could respond, Richard returned, dropping an arm around his son's shoulders with casual affection that would have been unthinkable months ago. "Lily's been telling me about this independent film festival next weekend. Apparently we're all attending." David groaned theatrically, but the smile tugging at his lips betrayed him. "Subtitles and experimental camera angles. Can't wait." As they parted ways, Sarah caught Richard's eye. The silent acknowledgement that passed between them held the weight of transformation, of broken patterns slowly mending, of new possibilities taking root. Back at their apartment, as Lily chattered excitedly about Richard's promise to introduce her to a Harvard alum in the film industry, Sarah felt a profound sense of rightness settle over her. The journey from receptionist to director had changed more than her professional life. It had created ripples of healing that extended far beyond herself. 6 months after her promotion, on a crisp autumn morning, Sarah arrived at the office to find a small wrapped package on her desk. Inside was a silver frame holding a photograph she'd never seen before. Richard and David Harrington standing on either side of an elegant woman with David's curls and Richard's determined chin. On the back, a simple inscription, "Patricia would have liked you. Thank you for reminding me what she taught me." Or hey. Sarah traced the face of the woman who must have been Richard's wife, understanding now the source of his test, and the depth of what her simple act of advocacy had awakened in him. Later that day, as she guided a nervous new receptionist through her first client greeting, Sarah caught sight of David and Richard through the glass wall of the conference room. They stood shoulder to shoulder, reviewing documents with matching expressions of concentration, the family resemblance suddenly striking. Through the partially open door, she heard David's voice, confident, assured, but tempered with the patience he'd lacked before. "The client isn't just buying our expertise," he was explaining to the gathered team. "They're investing in a relationship. We need to understand their goals beyond the numbers." Richard glanced up, meeting Sarah's gaze across the office. The pride in his eyes wasn't just for his son's professional growth, but for the healing that had transformed them both. Sarah smiled in return, thinking of Lily's recently arrived Harvard acceptance letter, of Marcus and Elaine Rodriguez's holiday card announcing her cancer remission, of the changes large and small that had rippled outward from one simple choice to speak up for what was right. Sometimes kindness required courage. Sometimes courage changed everything. And sometimes the tests we face reveal not just who we are, but who we have the potential to become. The receptionist who had advocated for a fired coworker, never realizing her boss secretly tested her for promotion, now stood at the center of a transformed web of human connection, proof that even in the calculating world of business, the greatest currency was, and would always be, compassion.